Well, here, I'm sure there are at least a couple of Labor MPs who'd support defunding the ABC. Yeah, the sensible ones. Thanks for joining us. Have a great evening. You will with this man, Paul Murray, up next.
This is Paul Murray Live.
Thank you, great man. How is this? We've got a big one for you tonight. Ray Hadley is here. David Littleproud is here. The wonderful Rose Jackson, Corey Bernardi and Senator Matt Canavan are here. So let's not muck around. Now, as we know, Monique Ryan is better than anyone else in the federal parliament, anyone who has voted to put her into the federal parliament. In fact, I think we can all agree. She is better than any human being that has ever walked the planet or been to the moon. Now, as you know, she constantly tells us this by her actions, by her quips, but most importantly, by the wearing of a mask. She wears it outside going into court. She wears it inside when she's in court. She wears it outside going into Parliament. And God love her, there she was today, like spy versus spy, with the glasses on top and the N95, just keeping herself and everyone else safe. Now, admittedly, none of the other teals were wearing it.
And chronic illness, put your masks on.
No one in the Labor Party was wearing one, including Anne Ali carrying on with the whole marionette puppet in the background as she did today. Oh, I'm a federal government minister. Oh, come on, Monique, what would you say to that COVID spreading nonsense?
And chronic illness, put your masks on.
What about the Greens, who, of course, they need to save the planet for the future, but today, not one of those bastards was wearing a mask.
And chronic illness, put your masks on.
So she is better than all of us. Now, of course, I should say, Dr. Monique Ryan, I apologise. I don't want to get anything wrong in the description of you as the future dear leader of this country. Now, as you know, she's got a couple of tickets on herself. And she said that, as a joke, of course, to her former chief of staff that you got to work really hard because I'm going to be Prime Minister one day. Well, that was what was being said when she got up to ask a question today. And she responded, oh, and Twitter loved it because she owned Peter Dutton.
I'll give the call to the member for Kooyong.
I'm sorry?
I give the call to the member for Kooyong to begin your question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I give the call to the member. Order. I give the call to the member for Kooyong.
I'll be there before you are. My question.
Order. See what I did there? See what I did? I could be the Prime Minister of Australia, I could be the President of the Senate, I'm going to be the Governor General, I'll be the Pope, I'll be the... Jack Tunney's going to be pushed out of the way. I'll be president of the World Wrestling Federation. Wow. Now, I don't know about you, but normally when someone does a funny, they giggle and move on. Did you see me? Did you see me? Did you see me? Anyway, she's better than all of us, including anyone who's ever walked on the moon, for she is the only one who can fly and touch the stars. Last week we showed you some horrible footage, and I've got to show it again quickly here, which was what has been known on the internet as Vape Baby, but more importantly, it's an 11-month-old kid whose mother decided to put a vape in its mouth, not once, but a couple of times. Well, the mother has now identified herself. She came forward, she ended up talking to the Daily Telegraph today. Here's a photo of Bub, Mum, and her mum. Miss Donovan says that what she did was a silly joke in front of friends when she didn't realise that someone in the room was filming her and would put it on social media. Yeah, because that's what we're worried about, that it was on social media rather than it happened at all. I wish I didn't do it. I never meant to hurt him. I never would hurt him. Well, again, I don't want you to lose your kid forever. I don't want anyone to go to jail, but you did. Right? Kids aren't meant to be inhaling smoke, let alone vape that's been handed to them. It was just a silly joke. Who finds it funny? I put the vape up near him. I never thought he would grab it. Then why did it happen again? and again rather than just once. I thought he'd push it away. How would he know? He's 11 months old. I'd never done it before. I don't even smoke near him. I'm always careful of that stuff. Now, as you know, police ultimately made the decision, nothing to see here. Family services, again, nothing to see here. And hopefully somebody learns their lesson. But I've got something sad to report to you tonight, and it also comes via Channel 7. It's not the only mother who is posting videos of this stuff on social media. This one from Queensland.
Max, this video provided anonymously to 7 News was taken by a 16-year-old girl who then sent it to her friends, telling them it was a nicotine-free e-cigarette. We're told the child is her little sister, who's around a year old. The teenager shows the infant how to vape, laughing as the child imitates her and coughs. The video has reportedly been posted to social media to shame the girl. It's also been passed on to police, who say they're now investigating.
But let me guess, we'll conclude nothing to see here. Now again, do I want these kids taken away from their parents and taken away forever? Obviously not. But do I also want nothing to see here, quickly move on? No. Do you get to say, I'm really sorry, I will never do it again? Yeah, probably. But you also don't get to turn around and say, oh, but I'd never harm a fly. Well, you did. There's a lot that's involved here, socioeconomic, all the rest of it, right? But there is a right and wrong. And the idea that somebody doesn't know the right and wrong of getting a kid that's 12 months or younger to smoke something, come on, that's just ridiculous. You know it and I know it. But alas, once this stuff starts, there's this weirdness that exists in some people where it needs to be on the internet, and as soon as they see that the normal news and shows like ours talk about it, then around and around it goes, and infamy becomes more exciting than responsibility, a responsibility that any person would know. Now, as you know, in regional Australia, you will be punished because you don't vote Labor. When you start voting Labor, maybe you'll get something out of a government, but enough people vote Labor in the cities or the near cities, which means they get, of course, into government and they're able to do, well, a whole bunch of stuff, including, of course, they're able to reheat Bill Shorten's 2019 climate policy. Oh, sorry, it's 2% different. Oh, okay. Now they are reheating from 2011, Julia Gillard's live export decision. Now, remember when Four Corners showed some terrible stuff out of Indonesia and Australia somehow got punished? Australian farmers got punished for what was happening in Indonesia. Well, it's been many years since, but under the cover of a brand new leader, a little bit of lipstick on the pig, dare I say, and guess what? The same policy has been reheated. Now, unlike the superannuation changes, unlike the doing nothing about cost of living, they did actually talk about this before the last election at 5 minutes to midnight, so they have a mandate for it. It is to get rid of live sheep exports. Now, what's fascinating about this is that, yes, the number of sheep or head of sheep has gone from about 2 million 10 years ago to now about 500,000. So the industry is shrinking. However, an awful lot of this, in fact, all of this, ends up going out of ports in Western Australia. There are 3,000 sheep farming families that will be affected by this decision. The Agriculture Minister today has turned around and said that the reason they're giving you a 2-year heads up is so you can retool and end up doing something else. But something David Littleproud, the Nationals leader, thinks needs to be paid attention to here, which is the 3,500 people who are already all in on the live sheep trade.
Murray Watt, a lawyer from Brisbane, really doesn't understand it, and the unintended consequence of this is that many Western Australian families are going to really hurt out of this. And for all these animal activists, you should dig deep into your moral compass and realise you are nothing but hypocrites.
All right, pick up the pace. You know by now about the news poll about superannuation. In fact, if you were watching our show last night, you would have seen it happen before our very eyes. I won't lie, I was surprised that every single demo of every political party and every age group is fine with the changes when it comes to superannuation. But, the changes are not as advertised. Yes, currently, 0.5% of people who have superannuation accounts have more than $3 million in their accounts, which is why the extreme majority of people who don't have that money in their accounts go, cool, whatever, it doesn't affect me. But listen to how the number will change throughout somebody who has just started a working life and the time that they retire. This questioning came out under questioning today from Matt Canavan in the Senate. He joins us on the panel in a second. But first, here's Jim Chalmers changing halfway, but basically admitting a massive number of people will end up in this hole.
Right now, in 2025, less than 1% of people will be impacted. By the beginning of next decade, it will be around 1%. In 30 years, 1 in 10 people will be impacted by it.
Well, 1 in 10 people or 10%? Now, I know how this works, which is that to talk about this at all means somehow that I'm trying to suck up to millionaires that I haven't met yet, in the desperate hopes that one day I'm going to hit the lottery and end up with $3 million in super. I'll give you the tip. I've had magical jobs my entire working life. I'm not going to end up with $3 million in superannuation. It's just about the principle. That's what I'm talking about here, which is that if you're going to make a tax change that ends up having quite a significant couple of $1 billion of changes to our economy, tell people up front. Now, according to today's polls, it's popular. So why didn't you tell us up front? Because they know what the reality of it was, which is that when you actually start to fiddle the numbers, it's not 0.5%, and it's not 1 out of 10, it's 10% of workers over a working life, yes, in 30 years. And if you turn around and tell me 30 years is a long way away and government policy can never blah, 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 2 words, climate change. Plenty of 20, 30, 40, 50-year targets being put into that place. Meantime, also worth noting about here about the Reserve Bank, that by this time tomorrow there's a good expectation that the worst is going to happen for anyone paying off a house, which is, get ready, they are going up yet again, as has been the case for the past 9 months, 8 of which under the current government, maybe a 10th happens tomorrow. Now again, hats off. I don't understand how they do it, but hats off that a government is able to completely pretend they have no role to play whatsoever in the monetary policy and fiscal policy of a country. But okay, fair enough. They've been able to tell everyone it's Philip Lowe and he's the bad guy here. And somehow if you put more diverse people on the board or you have a few more union reps, suddenly they won't put up interest rates. When the reality is that inflation is wildly out of control, needed to be pulled back. And despite the fact that it keeps being pulled back, the number of people going to the retail sector and spending like there was no problem has basically been the same. And remember, even in December, when the shops started to see people spending a bit less, guess what happened in January? Boom, 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 they were back again with their wallets open and an awful lot of this happening on credit. So sadly, expect this to happen tomorrow. Expect, obviously, the focus to be the very poor, the very young, the people that supposedly we care about, but not unless it hits the sweet spot of those that are on Twitter or read those particular websites that lazily repeat what's on Twitter. But on this program, we talk about people, and we have, whether we know the people in power or don't, whether I can ring the Prime Minister or he would block my phone calls. I care about poor people. I especially care about people who need help with mental health, because this is not about politics, it's about basic humanity. Channel 7 tonight tells us, yet again, cost of living is creating problems for people's mental health, and Lifeline is seeing an increase in people reaching out.
At Lifeline call centres across the country, they're ringing up records.
Well, I could help you find a financial counsellor.
Last month, an unprecedented 26,000 searches for help, driven by the cost of living crisis.
Demographically, it is right across the board. Young families, older people.
Another record has been broken with the latest employment figures. 900,000 Australians, 6.8% of the workforce, now hold multiple jobs.
I mean, again, it's not like they made any serious promises about cost of living at the last election, is it? But of course they don't matter. Core, non-core promises. That's from the ALP, remember? Good news, however, is that when inflation goes up, there is actually an uptick in some people with their welfare benefits. So that will be good for them, but also that's a pump full of money, which means, is that going to feed into inflation? We'll find out in the next little while. Let's get into this conversation right now with Matt Canavan, who was the one who asked the right questions today in the Senate, who got all of these super numbers around. Cory Bernardi, our dear friend from Adelaide, and Rose Jackson, who is working her backside off right now to get the Labor Party elected in New South Wales. And I've got to say, every time I'm down the barrel and I'm firing up, when the grabs are on, I have a look at a little glance, and a couple of times you look terse there, Rose. You look like you weren't all in on every word I had to say.
Not quite.
Fair enough. All right, so let's get to this before we get into anything else. Now, I want to play the exchange that revealed all of this about superannuation and the sliding scale. 0.5%, 1%, 10%, not 1 in 10, because that's not the numbers that they were talking about, remain all on the same level, apples with apples with apples. It is, from our dear friend, asking the Finance Minister in the Senate. Roll the tape.
Thank you, President. I welcome the question on the government's modest change to the superannuation arrangements that we announced last week. In 30 years, Treasury projects that roughly only the top 10% of earners will retire, with superannuation balances of around $3 million or more.
All right, I can understand the numbers, but Matt, why does it matter?
Well, it matters on a couple of levels, Paul. The first reason it matters is because it's been a massive breach of trust from this government. Not only did they break a promise to not tax, not tinker with the superannuation scheme, they haven't been upfront with the Australian people about the changes they proposed, the promises that they broke. Last week they said only 0.5% of Australians would face these higher taxes. In fact, we learned actually the figure is 20 times that amount. The government just didn't disclose that. They had this modelling last week, and they had this super secret modelling on their superannuation changes, and they kept it under wraps. So how can they be trusted on anything else? Because what else are they hiding? Well, they should release all of the modelling now showing this completely. The other point to make here is I don't trust the Treasury figures at all. Just some basic numbers, Paul, show that if you're on average incomes and you start with 200 grand in super, within 30 years, you'll have more than $3 million in that account if you get average returns on your super. So we need all those assumptions from Treasury, because just an average income earner here could face this over 30 years. And to the Labor Party who say, oh, it's in 30 years' time, what does it all matter? Well, why are we putting the money away? Why do we have a superannuation scheme? The whole thing is for 30 years, isn't it? The whole reason I'm putting, or I get taken, 9% of my wage gets taken off me every year, is so that it can be there for me in 30 years' time. So it is actually in 30 years' time that matters here. And what looks to be the situation is this sneaky tax from the Labor Party is going to hit almost every Australian in 30 years' time.
Rose, be absolutely honest. When you saw that poll today, were you as surprised as I was that it was every demo, every age group, every political group here? Because I know what the messaging was, but we certainly know what some of the criticism has been in the past week, and I think rightly so. But what did you think of that poll that said that Australians, they backed this despite the fact that it might end up eating into the middle of Australia?
Yeah, I mean, no, I actually wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised, to be honest, for two reasons. One, I think that most people do understand that this is quite a minimal change that is unlikely to affect them. I mean, I think most people can understand that the types of numbers that we're talking about are just fundamentally out of reach for most average working people in their super balances. And so that didn't surprise me. The other bit that didn't surprise me is that people understand you have to make tough choices in budgets. You know, I work in housing and homelessness. You know, I'm constantly banging the table, at least at the state level, for funding for social and affordable housing. You know, there are choices that need to be made, and I think most Australians can understand that this is a good choice to invest in the kind of services and support that most people need.
Well, later in the show, I will give you a gold and silver example of maybe how to spend a little bit of better use of taxpayers' money, particularly on those issues. But Corey, again, let's just take sort of the 30,000-foot view, the view from the moon where Monique Ryan is already the leader, which is the sort of clever use of numbers here, right? Now, remember, when the left want to kill us off the stage 3 tax cuts, they, of course, compound all of the money together over, 250 years, and they're able to get to $58 billion, right? When politicians really are making an announcement at budget time that's 4 years away and over 12 years, it's still $4 billion. We saw today that when they got caught going from 0.5% to 1% to 10%, that it went from 0.5% to 1% to 1 in 10. And it has been fascinating to follow the breadcrumbs around the media of the number of people who don't even work out that they've just played switcheroo in front of people.
Paul, I think this just demonstrates that people in media, I think people in politics simply don't understand superannuation. And I think most Australians don't understand superannuation. If given a long enough timeline, every single Australian will be affected by this for the simple reason that governments continue to debase money. We've got inflation that's growing, and which means basically the value of money halves in every 10 or so years at the moment. So we have a significant issue here, and people are going, oh, what does it matter? I can't understand having $3 million in my super account, so doesn't affect me, but it will ultimately, because they'll set the arbitrary parameters today. They'll put retrospective taxation in, which is what this is. And then once they've set that parameter, they'll keep tinkering with it, as they always do, to make it, narrow it down to a broader and broader class, if I can say that. There are two distinct problems here. One I've mentioned. Matt's right about Matt's absolutely right about the assumptions. Release the modelling, release the inflation figures, release the sort of average wages that they're expecting, and they will contradict other things that they'll have in the budget. Mark my words. The second thing is this is retrospective. It is undermining the superannuation system. And the third thing, which really gets my goat, is people like Anthony Albanese are largely immune to this. He's on a defined benefits pension, which, by the time you add it flowing down to his partner, and Robert Gottliebsen did the numbers today, it's probably worth $20 million for any private person to generate that sort of wealth over that sort of time frame. There's zero risk attached to it, right? How badly is he going to be affected, and the other superannuants that are cashing in on this and coming out and saying we should be charging down this path? That's the real question they need to answer, including the public servants, but they won't, because they haven't got an answer to it, and it might actually affect them. This is shameful.
Yeah, look, and as we played the numbers out last week, right? So if you have $3 million in superannuation, you retire at average retirement age, and you have average life expectancy, it's about $187,000 a year that you will have for the rest of your life. Way better than anyone who, of course, is on a pension where it could be as low as $20,000 or $26,000. But also those that are on the average amount of superannuation, it's only a little bit above age pension numbers. Albanese, $400,000 a year every year for the rest of his life because he was in the parliament pre-2004. That's $6.5 million that he's going to have out of superannuation between retirement age, 9 years from now, and life expectancy. Of course, we hope he has a long life and plenty more pension years beyond that. But also, he's got $5 million worth of property. So this bloke who's in it for you, who thinks the Liberal Party's, and the Nats are fighting for the richies, he's the one who's going to have $11 and a bit million in his retirement.
Can I just add this, Paul? Sorry to interrupt. But understand, his pension is indexed, right? This $3 million figure is not going to be indexed. Yeah. His pension then flows down to his partner. He could marry a 20-year-old and they would be on the pension for another 88% of his pension for the term of their natural life as well, which could be another 40 years. This is a scandal, and they're making it apply to everyone or other people, but not to themselves. And that's where the buck has to stop.
Paul, good thing for my wife, I don't get it anymore, so I had no point marrying a 20-year-old. I'm happy where I
am. Fair enough, all right. But she gets all those...
Albo voted to get rid of it for me. I think you too, Corey. We both miss out on it, I think. So he kept it for himself, but not for the rest of us.
All right, a couple of other things. Now, before we get to my idea about how the New South Wales budget can save a little bit of money, apparently $9.5 million is going to be spent by the government for the facts of The Voice. This is being suggested as a little bit of pre-pumping for the obvious yes case. The government says, no, it's basically a part of that is going to produce the yes-no pamphlet that everyone will be able to sit around and read. Rose, is this the clever way of giving us all the information that leads people to a yes?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's giving people the facts on The Voice. I mean, this is the point I've made on your show before, Paul. A lot of young people, I mean, I'm not even that young. I've never voted in a referendum. We have not had these things regularly. It is quite unclear, even the process. I mean, a lot of people I talk to, they don't even know that there's 2 houses of parliament in the level of civic education in our schools. That's another conversation. But the reality is the fundamentals of what is a referendum, what is this change, the straight up and down facts are worth communicating. Otherwise, I think, we're going to have a lot of people who don't even understand the entire process of the referendum. So, I don't think it's some big conspiracy to pump prime the yes vote. I think it's just trying to explain to people what this conversation is that we're having as a nation.
It's 24 years since our last referendum. People are all doing the sums in their head. She's 21, by the way. I don't know how anyone can work back from there, but that's what she is. Vote. Yeah, all right. So give me an idea here, Matt, about why it is the pump priming. I mean, because we know there was going to be the pamphlet. I don't know how you get to $9.5 million on any of this stuff, but is this the stuff where you give money to the AEC to basically say, turn up on this date, fill out this form, here are your options?
Well, there's no trust here in the government on this issue. I wish I could say they would produce a fair and balanced set of information. But we've already seen tax deductibility status being given to a Yes organisation last year's budget. No similar designation given to an organisation on the No side of the debate. The government's had to be pulled kicking and screaming just to provide funding for a Yes and a No pamphlet as well. So I don't have any confidence that this will be fair and balanced. And all I can say, though, is that the politicians down here in Canberra are desperate for you to vote yes. And so if you think normally what politicians want align with your interests, sure, go ahead and vote for it. But if you think, you might just want to think twice about why do the politicians want this so much? Why does everyone in Canberra seem to be obsessed with The Voice when out there in the real world no one even knows what it means, certainly not for them in their real lives. And maybe that would just mean that you should be a little bit sceptical of this, because when something is in the interests of politicians, it's probably not in your interest.
Yeah, good point. All right, now let's go to a speed round where everyone's going to get a single topic each as we go around the table here. So enjoy. We're gamifying the show. How exciting. I've been in a meeting. Now, let's have a chat here about vaccine mandates. Now, there's this. Sharri Markson had a chat with the former Prime Minister Scott Morrison earlier today. Dominic Perrottet's on the radio saying that, there's a limit to my power about how far I can go when it comes to vaccine mandates. Corey, help me out here. Let's just take the New South Wales government as an example. They can pass a law that legalises, and I was supportive of this, euthanasia, right? Literally a matter of life and death. They can codify it, they can pass it, they can all the rest of it, but they can't pass a piece of legislation saying vaccine mandates for COVID-19 are illegal from July 1 this year.
Yeah, I don't understand this. I heard both interviews, one with the former PM and one with the current Premier of New South Wales. I think both of them were gilding the lily, to put it politely. You had Dom Perrottet doing the Pontius Pilate, washing his hands of it all, because he knows it's a completely dud policy. And you had the former Prime Minister doing the same, even though he stopped people without vaccinations from travelling overseas. And he then said, remember, he declared there was going to be no more border lockdowns. Well, if he had the power to make that declaration, why didn't he use it at the time? This is an extraordinary case of crab walking away from a disaster that all the politicians in this country who refused to speak up against the injustice that was done over COVID-19, about the mandated vaccines, the whole Papers, Please program, they should be ashamed of themselves, because they traduced traditional liberties, traditional freedoms on spurious scientific evidence that's been exposed today, or exposed repeatedly. And I'll cut them some slack for early in the piece, but when the evidence was clear that this was a con job of monumental proportions, they all squibbed it.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they've been rewarded.
And this is the thing. Early in the pandemic, masks in, out, efficacy of the vaccine was about transmission. Then it was about hospitalisation. All of these things have been, as they say, the moving feast. Now, Matt, I want to play you something from Channel 9, which was that some spears that had gone from Indigenous Australia to England are coming back to Australia, and some academics in the UK don't like it. Roll the tape from Channel 9.
The strange men from far away would take a quiver of 40 Indigenous spears from an emptied camp to be spirited half a planet away to an English university.
Cook himself wrote about them, about taking the spears on arrival.
But now, 2.5 centuries on, 4 remaining spears will be returned to their home here on Darawal land.
As they should. What do you think, Matt?
Well, look, I'm generally of the view that anything the British Empire stole during its colonial period should be returned to those countries. I think the Elgin Marble should go back to Greece. These should come back to Australia. In saying that, though, I do share some of the concerns of what the UK academics have said, that how would reducing the knowledge or spread of Aboriginal culture in the UK help Aboriginal people? So I hope there's still some kind of exhibit there, and I don't know if there's been any kind of negotiation, because I don't necessarily have a problem with some artefacts from Australia on a voluntary basis being displayed at the British Museum and displaying Aboriginal culture there. So I don't know if some work couldn't be done to come to as I say, a voluntary arrangement here, but ultimately it should be up to the Indigenous people to decide where they are.
Well, dare I say, a global conversation. A whole bunch of people in skivvies can all get together and run all the different museums, and they'll say, all right, what have you got, what have you got, what have you got, what have you got? All right, everything goes back to where it came, and then, there'll be a travelling exhibition of Indigenous art and from Australia and this from Greece and all the rest of it. See, just the big thinker here. And finally, the Logies are coming to Sydney. I know, who cares? Why am I talking about this? Because the New South Wales government is paying for it. Now, well done to anyone from sporting organisations to cultural ones that turn around and say, I've got a shiny thing here. Who wants to bid for it? Who wants to bid for it? Western Australia turns around and says, could we have it? Could we have it? We'll have WrestleMania, right? $25 million. What about the Marvel movie? We'll have it. We'll have it. As long as I can go to the premiere, says the Anastasia, the Queen of Queensland, $25 million. And apparently now there's money from the New South Wales taxpayer going for the bloody Logies. Now, I've been once, the team won, I didn't have my shirt tucked in, great, that's my Logies experience done. Bogans represent. Why is there $1 of taxpayers' money in this garbage when, if it's even $4 million, that $4 million could go to any number of the projects that we talk about on and off the air all the time, with homelessness, with people who want to get into what we used to call housing commission, now social housing. What a waste of money.
Full disclosure, Paul, my mum has a Logie or had a Logie.
Of course, yes.
And so, look, it was a bit exciting in the old, Jackson household when the Logies were on. But fundamentally, I agree with you. There is just a list as long as your arm of this stuff, and the states bidding against each other is forcing up the price for all of us. I mean, I'm for these.
It's not the Olympics.
I'm
it's
for the
Logies.
economy. I want to bring jobs here. I want to bring activity here. So yes, I'm for the economy, but we do need to perhaps have a sensible conversation about really how much money is going to that stuff when there is so much that is in desperate need in the budget. So, I don't know whether it's a bit of a cost-benefit analysis here. I'm not really sure the Logies is bringing that much. Some of those other projects, look, maybe they're massive. Maybe they are just pumping activity into our economy. But that's the analysis that we need to do. And this state v state bidding war for all this stuff is just draining money out of public housing and public schools and public hospitals. And, I think that's a problem.
I agree. I mean, look, if you want to host the Logies at Corey's house, he'll pay for it. All right? Maybe Rocky can pull a couple of dollars together and just cut off one of the days of beef week.
As long as you pay for the drinks, Paul, they seem to consume a lot of alcohol.
There's some stuff I'll also say, but we'll move it on.
As long as you pay for the legal fees afterwards.
All right, thank you one and all. Sniffer Dogs at your peril.
Yeah.
All right, one and all, do appreciate it. We'll talk to you again very soon. Enjoy the campaign trail. Ray Hadley joins us next to talk about that and a whole lot more, including, more information. The more of those you knock down, the worse our power system gets.
This program is brought to you by Harvey Norman. For everything you need in furniture, bedding, electrical and technology.
Friday nights are all about free thinking on Sky News Australia. From 5 p.m, Erin dives into the day's headlines. At 6, Peter Credlin won't hold back.
Labor loves a handout. Labor loves spending your money.
Then, Fearless Opinions with Rita Panahi. The US report has American politics covered, and the media show puts the press under the spotlight. Don't miss Free Thinking Fridays on Sky News.
Life's epic. Share it. Say hello to the brand new Samsung Galaxy S23 series, now at Harvey Norman.
Right now, get the 160 kilowatt LDV T60 Max Auto for the price of a manual from only $38,990 drive away. Get your free auto upgrade at a dealer today. LDV, bring it on.
Printers with sustainable features? Using only a quarter of the energy of a laser printer, this Epson Business Inkjet printer won't save the world, but it's a great way to print world-saving ideas. Epson Enterprise, taking sustainability seriously.
Whether you've got an important presentation, or you're going hang gliding, or you're making an important presentation whilst hang gliding, we'll make sure you spring out of bed ready for anything. Find out more at emma-sleep.com.au.
This is Travis, Jason and Meatball. To the untrained eye, it may not seem they're making today count.
But untrained eyes can be misleading.
Because Travis has
hooked my two little wingman up
with everyday pet insurance from Woolworths. He doesn't just get award-winning cover, he also gets
10% off a Woolies shop every month. Oh.
Make your insurance count. Make every day count.
To be here celebrating women working in mining is just an amazing thing to be doing, and I really appreciate everything Mrs. Reinhardt does.
This is the best mining company to work for.
Everyone kind of takes you under their wing.
Being an older person in mining as well, I find that people can come to me for advice.
I did hairdressing for a year before coming to mining. It's the best thing I've ever done.
It offers a level of financial security that women outside of the industry don't necessarily have, and it's just awesome.
We would like women to be safer here than they are anywhere else.
Every day is exciting, there's something happening.
Just get out there. Try something new.
This is the engine room of our Australian economy, and we get to be a part of what keeps this country afloat and helps with infrastructure and all the other projects that makes Australia such a fantastic country to live in.
To join us in building an exceptional future, go to buildinganexceptionalfuture.com.au.
As New South Wales heads to the polls, the final and most important leaders' debate of the campaign is live on Sky News.
The Liberals have smashed family bills.
Dominic Perrottet and Chris Minns will go head-to-head in the Sky News Daily Telegraph People's Forum.
You cannot risk a Labor government.
Grilled by undecided voters, it could be the pivotal event that decides the election. Live 7:30 p.m. March 22 on Sky News Australia.
Thanks for watching. If you want to get in touch on Instagram, it is at PM Off Air. Ray Hadley is the Hall of Famer, morning show host on Radio 2GB, 4BC and stations around the country. We have a chance to talk to him every now and then. And so much of it involves energy.
There's a lot to talk about, whether it's federally, state-wise, where I reside in New South Wales, where I broadcast to in Queensland, and a lot of it's about power. What about Matt Kean? I know that I get really upset when I mention his name. So MK. What about MK?
You said it. I didn't even bring it up. May the transcript read, Ray Hadley introduced it. That's your fault.
Well, I got there before you did. Anyway, the point being this. Matt's decided Eraring, the power station that is set to close in 2025, shock horror, should remain open, or we may all be living in caves by 2026. Liddell goes this year, in fact it goes next month, and all of a sudden Matt said, hang on a sec, and furthermore, Chris Minns told my colleague Ben Fordham this morning that he might make sure the coal mines remain open. Now I hope he's spoken to his federal Energy Minister Chris Bowen about this, because that'll come as a shock to poor Chris, because he wants to close them all down pronto and rely on wind and of course the sun, when we know, look, this isn't about climate change, Paul. It's not about climate denying, it's about this. Whatever we have when we're long gone in 50 years from now, whether it's nuclear or a combination of hydro and a combination of hydrogen and a whole range of other things, we don't know. But I can tell you one thing, if they stop coal-fired power stations in New South Wales and Queensland right now, as they've done in Victoria, we'll all be sitting around in the dark. We'll be cold, of course, in winter and too hot in summer because we won't be able to do it. And I noticed Chris Bowen, speaking of him, he's got this wonderful new electric car. Do you think he's Fred Flintstone, powering it with his feet? It comes from electricity, Chris. You plug it in, old mate. And I'm tipping most of the power you plug it into when you're out of the ACT comes from those dreadful, dreadful things called coal-fired power stations.
But also, we are experiencing in New South Wales and in Queensland a bloody hot day, right? So this is peak energy use when everyone's got the AC on. Certainly when it'll be super cold, it'll be, peak energy use as well. So you've got to imagine the system that was there 12 months ago. Well, one of the legs has been kicked out of the table, one of the wheels has been taken off the car, and it's not being replaced. And we're being told that even more things will need to drag and access to the electricity network from our cars to our homes to our factories, and they haven't even built enough to replace what we were doing 2 years ago. And Matt Keenan, can't hide anywhere because they're the state government that are in the position to have built the replacement technology, but they haven't built it. Instead, they're going to introduce a tax, as Mark Latham told us last week, that's going to be handed on to everyone for the cost of transition.
I'll take it to the front page of The Australian today. The originating chair of the Productivity Commission, Gary Banks. He said a whole range of things about where we're in strife, and energy was top of the list. Now, he made this very salient point down the story. He said, at the moment, Russia is bombing the Ukrainian coal-fired power stations. In Australia, we're blowing them up ourselves. I mean, we don't need Russia to invade, we're just blowing them up. We're, figuratively blowing them up by closing them down before we're ready to close them down, which may not be for the next 20 years for all I know. And you think about the technology over the last 10, 15, 20 years. When I started in radio almost 40 years ago, there's such a thing as a computer or mobile phone, old-fashioned Olympus typewriter. And if you were lucky, a two-way. I mean, that's in the space of 4 decades. Goodness only knows what's going to happen in the next 4 decades. But we've got to make sure in the interim we have reliable coal-fired power. And, of course, as you know, we go up to Tomago, the aluminium smelter. If they rely upon the batteries they've got in South Australia, they go for 8 minutes. 8 minutes they go. They need power for 24/7, 365 days a year. Reliable baseload power. We all need it. We all need it. And it's just infuriating to think that if you come out with this sort of typical comment, you're a climate denier. It's not about denying anything. It's about the practicality of it all. It's about making sure our children and grandchildren can actually survive the next summer, the next winter, and so on for the next decade until we find something else.
I'm so with you. This is the thing. It's not about climate action. It's about the cost of transition. And the cost of transition is not just financial. It is reliability. It is safety. It is something that you can bet your country on, and we're making the wrong play. And by the way, what about MK? So when he's talking about a coal-fired power station disappearing, it'll be replaced by a giant battery. Well, last time I checked, you need to charge a battery. So you're getting rid of energy production for energy storage. It's not the same thing, but these people, because a giant battery gets everyone's head nodding at a dinner party at Malcolm's house, then somehow all of this just, again, it's well and good just to get more batteries, but you've got to put stuff into the battery, and that's the problem. I want to get to something else just quickly about New South Wales here. What the hell is this state election about? Like, I remember there when it was time to get rid of Keneally and the rest of them, well, it was because they stunk to high heaven and they hadn't built anything in the best part of a decade. What is this election about in New South Wales?
Probably a race to the bottom. I'll tell you what I think might happen in New South Wales. I think it's going to go down to very close, a hung parliament. If Perrottet pulls off the miracle like Morrison did a few years back, it'll be predicated on this, I think. The people in New South Wales look across the Commonwealth, the mainland states and territories, they're all Labor. They look in Canberra, it's Labor. Are they going to really hand government to Chris Minns and Labor and say, well, there we go, we've got Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, the ACT, which is Labor Green, the Northern Territory and WA, all Labor, including the federal government. That may be one of those things that comes into people's mind as they go to the election a little bit later this month, on March 25. They might think, oh, we really want everyone to be Labor right across the Commonwealth? Maybe not.
Now, last one, I won't hide it. I was a bit surprised at the response of the news poll that every demographic, every age, every political party supports some of the changes that are happening when it comes to superannuation. You've had plenty of people call you, write letters and no doubt have a chat to you who are nowhere near $3 million in superannuation, who have been red hot in the past week, but it didn't seem to turn up in the polls. What's going on?
Well, it's very simple. When questioned about this last year, the now Prime Minister and the now Treasurer said we have no intention of changing super. Then all of a sudden, the thought bubble hit them and they thought, oh, here's a way to get some billions back into the budget. We'll slam that 0.5 of 1% who've got 3 million or more. in their super. I think the reason that I'm getting kickback from people who don't have $3 million in it, they don't like being misled or lied to. And then you had the Deputy Prime Minister unable on the Today program last Friday to explain it to Carl and to Peter Dutton. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is there's a lot of people in government, in the federal government at the moment, Labor government, who don't understand it. It's something that has to be taken to an election. And the next election will come up in 2025. Make it your platform then. I don't think Albanese will lead us the way Tanya Plibersek's aiming up at the moment. I think she might be the next Prime Minister. We might have a change. We're going to have a full-term Prime Minister from Albanese. But whoever it may be leading the Labor Party, go to the population in the next election and say, listen, we've got this idea about super and we want to change it. What do you think? And see how they go then.
As Ray and I were just talking, a news poll has just dropped. I'll tell you what it is on the other side of the break. It is about The Voice and whether people are starting to walk away from the idea or not. Details right after the break, as well as David Littleproud, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Nationals MP, but a man who cares about the sheep farmers of this country. And for everyone watching on Sky News Regional, we do too.
And we're ready to run. Get ready for the world's best to compete for the championship title.
Racing Dreams, the championships, Saturdays, 9 a.m.
Get closer to every event. More noise, more coverage, more dreams will come true.
And they're off and racing.
From the sales ring right through to the racetrack.
It's the racing show you can't afford to miss.
Racing Dreams, the championships, Saturdays, 9 a.m.
I'm incredibly proud to be a female in the mining industry, led by a great role model for mining, for the Australian economy.
This is the best mining company to work for.
Everyone kind of takes you under their wing.
Being an older person in mining as well, I find that people can come to me for advice.
I did hairdressing for a year before coming to mining. It's the best thing I've ever done.
It offers a level of financial security that women outside of the industry don't necessarily have, and it's just awesome.
We would like women to be safer here than they are anywhere else.
Every day is exciting, there's something happening.
And just get out there, try something new.
This is the engine room of our Australian economy, and we get to be a part of what keeps this country afloat and helps with infrastructure and all the other projects that makes Australia such a fantastic country to live in.
To join us in building an exceptional future, go to buildinganexceptionalfuture.com.au.
At Carpet Call, we've got over $50 million worth of stock to sell. So when you hear this, you know who to call. That means amazing savings on our carpet, timber, vinyl and laminate flooring. Take 50% off the ticketed price of all fashion rugs, online and in-store. Save on our made-to-order blinds and shutters. So whenever you hear this, you know who to call.
Call, Carpet Call. The experts in the trade.
This is Bruce, a baby name that has fallen out of the top 10 of late. But Bruce doesn't really care.
I don't really care.
He's been careful with money and raised 4 wonderful kids. One day, they may even appreciate him.
Ha!
Bruce may be retired.
But my brain isn't.
That's why he's switched to everyday comprehensive car insurance from Woolworths. He gets quality cover for his beloved Chariot and
10% off a Woolies shop every month. This thing, it's always on.
Make your insurance count. Make every day count.
Go Ultra. What level's that?
It's next level.
Welcome to Foxtel 4K Ultra HD. Here, everything is Ultra. And now, every game of every round of AFL is live in 4K Ultra HD.
Wow, everything here really glistens.
I think that's the baby oil.
Oh.
Let us show you around.
Go Ultra with Foxtel.
One thing is clear. If you live in regional Australia, you will be punished by a Labor government each and every time because, largely, you don't vote Labor. Perfect example of that is the climate policy, which is just a reheated version of Bill Shorten's, and now the reheated Julia Gillard live export position. The Agriculture Minister, Murray Watt, who lives in Brisbane, has said that this industry is going to be over very soon, the live sheep export industry. David Littleproud is the Nationals leader and understandably can see the forest from the trees here and knows what happened last time and what's about to happen this time. Nice to see you, David. this is all fun for the inner city on Twitter and a way to hold off the Greens from taking seats in southeast Queensland. But in the real world, there's about 500,000 head of sheep that are exported every single year. Behind that, businesses and families who need to export those sheep.
Yeah, mate, there's about 3,000 Western Australian families that won't have a future under this. There's nearly $100 million that comes back into the Western Australian economy. And for all the moral virtues, and not only the Labor Party, but also these animal activists, all they will do by shutting down the Australian live sheep export industry is export animal welfare standards to countries like Sudan and Ethiopia. They don't have the animal welfare standards that we do. We can actually measure the pants per minute on those boats in the time that they're on there. We measure the flow of air through those boats. We measure, in fact, the length of the wool before we put them on the boat and the actual size of the sheep in weight before we put them on the boat. Because we've done the science, we've moved away from a mortality to an animal welfare model, and we have the best standards in the world. The sheep industry acknowledged they got things wrong, but we reformed it. And there was issues with the cattle industry. They got a second chance. Where's the second chance for Western Australian producers who have done the right thing all through the supply chains? This is world leading, and we are going to cut and run. That's not the Australian way. And Murray Watt, a lawyer from Brisbane, really doesn't understand it. And the unintended consequences of this is that many Western Australian families are going to really hurt out of this.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned before, about 3,000 people, 3,000 families. Now, Murray Watt will claim, and the Labor Party says, oh, well, we're giving you a couple of years heads up here. We're giving you a chance to transition your business. Has this bloke been on a farm? Is this bloke aware of why certain things happen in certain parts of the country? Is he aware that, while I know the preference for every acreage is to turn it into solar panels, some people might not want to do that with their intergenerational bit of Australia?
Well, this is their business model, mate, is what they're trying to do is to close it down slowly and quietly. And what they'll do in 2025 is say, see, the industry fell apart. They're not exporting anyway, because what they're trying to do is break investment confidence now from the industry, from the farm gate, all the way through, whether that be the trucking companies, the feeding companies, the stockmen, the vets, and say, oh, well, there's no industry there in the future, so we're going away. And so they can say, hey, look, it wasn't our fault anyway. It was closing down. So that's why the Nationals have made it clear. No matter when we get back in, we are making a commitment that we will reinstate the live sheep export industry to Western Australia and any other part of the country wants to do it. That is common sense. That's a fair go, and we should stay and do it because we've got a responsibility as a good global citizen to lead the world in animal welfare standards, where we can count and we have stocking density rates of how many sheep we can put on a boat. Some of these other countries just put as many as they can fit on, and they get paid for how many's left when they get there. That is a perverse animal welfare outcome, and for all these animal activists, you should dig deep into your moral compass and realise you are nothing but hypocrites.
One of the many downsides of the type of government that we've got right now is because the National Party and Coalition, basically, the Libs can't do anything without the Nats, Nats can't do anything without the Libs. It means there's a constant conversation about regional Australia at the same time as balancing the interests of the city. As soon as you change that dynamic, basically you see that the coverage of issues like this goes down the back of the bus. And it's because it doesn't produce question time drama, it doesn't produce, coalition agreement drama, it doesn't produce will they or won't they spill drama. But the actual people who get affected by this, part of the reason the government's able to get away with things as blatant as this is because much of the media basically starts to tighten its focus in on those cities and people outside of them can go jump.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening because no one's taking an interest in this other than you and a few local media in WA. And it is a big national issue because this has contagion onto live cattle as well. They've been there before, and in fact, they cost you. And they're costing you now about $2 billion in compensation because of the knee-jerk reaction they took in banning the industry last time. So this is the model of trying to do it now. They're just slowly going to do rural Australia over. And we'll say to Murray Watt, if he's so convicted on this, then put his science, Australian science, against the science of animal welfare standards in the countries we're competing with. Let's see how far he goes with that. Just use some common sense, come forward and let's have the debate. And I've got to say, at long last, we're seeing some of these industry groups stand up. We've been behind the scenes saying you've got to show some, because otherwise this is how they're going to do it. And it's great to see that the peak bodies have now finally grown some spine and got out of the corner, carrying the corner and having a red hot crack. This is just one of the issues in regional Australia that we can't look left and right when we make some noise. We need to see them behind us, because that is actually how we get greater media attention, is when we do have these peak bodies showing some courage and conviction of what's right for regional Australia, but what's right for this country.
David Little, proud leader of the Nationals, so stand by this one. It is going to be a big story into the future, particularly in Western Australia. All right, if you've got a say on that, always send me an email, paul@skynews.com.au. Quick break. 5 minutes away from the late debate here on Sky News. Thanks for watching.
Hi, wokies. Do you want to know what I really think? I want you to be challenged. The woke virus infests itself into any form of culture.
Piers Morgan Uncensored, Tuesday to Friday, 11 p.m.
Life's epic. Share it. Say hello to the brand new Samsung Galaxy S23 series, now at Harvey Norman.
For some, it's a humble sandwich. Here, the bread is your oyster. You melt the rules and open possibilities. You turn a BLT into a BL kimchi. Top off your work of art with a decorative pickle. Abbott's Bakery, made for makers.
Printers with sustainable features? Using only a quarter of the energy of a laser printer, this Epson Business inkjet printer won't save the world, but it's a great way to print world-saving ideas. Epson Enterprise, taking sustainability seriously.
Thousands of Aussies trust Emma with their sleep because Choice's top-scoring Emma Comfort mattress has you and your sleep covered, but not messy morning hair. We haven't got a solution for that yet. Find out more at emma-sleep.com.au.
This is Bruce, a baby name that has fallen out of the top 10 of late. But Bruce doesn't really care.
I don't really care.
He's been careful with money and raised 4 wonderful kids. One day, they may even appreciate him.
Ha!
Bruce may be retired.
But my brain isn't.
That's why he's switched to everyday comprehensive car insurance from Woolworths. He gets quality cover for his beloved Chariot and
10% off a Woolies shop every month. This thing, it's always on.
Make your insurance count. Make every day count.
I reached a point where I was 153 kilos, I was diabetic, and I thought this needs to stop. Optiman is a really amazing product. I've shredded 40 kilos in the last 2 years.
Start your journey your way with OptiSlim, available at these leading retailers.
I'm incredibly proud to be a female in the mining industry, led by a great role model for mining, for the Australian economy.
This is the best mining company to work for.
Everyone kind of takes you under their wing.
Being an older person in mining as well, I find that people can come to me for advice.
I did hairdressing for a year before coming to mining. It's the best thing I've ever done.
It offers a level of financial security that women outside of the industry don't necessarily have, and it's just awesome.
We would like women to be safer here than they are anywhere else.
Every day is exciting. There's something happening. Just get out there. Try something new.
This is the engine room of our Australian economy, and we get to be a part of what keeps this country afloat and helps with infrastructure and all the other projects that makes Australia such a fantastic country to live in.
To join us in building an exceptional future, go to buildinganexceptionalfuture.com.au.
I'm steadfast in my belief that the voice to Parliament will pass because of the nature of our electorate these days. A new opinion poll says that it will be tight. According to a news poll this evening, it is now yes is at 53, which is down 3, no at 38, which is up 1. Why am I still confident, though, that it is going to pass in a majority of states with a majority of people? Because there are more women than men who vote. 54% of women say yes. There are an awful lot of people that are millennials and younger, so that's 50 and under. Support there is 57% between 35-49, 64% 18 to 34. And then it is tight with no winning out at 44% for 50 to 64 and 48% again of people saying no that are 65 plus. So again, just the demographics of the way that the electorate works these days, the assumption that anyone over 55 is automatically a hardcore Liberal, you can't count that anymore. There are a huge number of people that are now sitting in that period of basically 35 to 45. And as we showed you with the federal election last year, particularly professional women, 35 to 54, once they start to break off in a certain direction, well, you end up getting the results that we have got at the last national election. No doubt. Plenty more discussion about that poll and a whole lot more with the late debate. Tomorrow night, we've got plenty of things on the show for you, as well as Mark Latham on Wednesday night, Dave Rubin as well. And if you ever want to get in touch, send me an email, paul@skynews.com.au. Here's the late debate. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.